महाभारतम् धर्म अधर्म संघर्षणम्.
A king, Shvetaki by name, performed a great sacrifice. The sacrifice spanned 12 years. The fire god received oblations uninterruptedly for 12 years. He therefore suffered from indigestion and became sluggish. His luster dimmed, and he could not receive oblations at other sacrifices. Brahma then said to him, "Burn Khandavavana. The herbs and the fat of animals will cure you, and you will regain your luster. You will then be able to receive oblations at sacrifices." Agni, the fire god, then approached Arjuna. He introduced himself and told him of his intention to burn down Khandavavana. He said, "Arjuna, in Khandavavana dwells Ashwasena, the son of Takshaka. Takshaka is a friend of Indra. In order to protect his friend's son, Indra may send down rains and obstruct me. Will you help me and make my effort successful?" Arjuna was in a dilemma. After all, he was born to Kunti with the blessings of Indra. If he helped Agni, he may have to fight against Indra himself. Would that be proper? But as a Kshatriya, he could not say no to Agni, who had sought his help. Arjuna was greatly agitated. He sought Krishna's counsel. Krishna said, "Arjuna, it is Brahma's order to Agni to burn down Khandavavana. There would be no impropriety if you help Agni." Arjuna gave his consent to Agni. Agni was happy. He bestowed on Arjuna a mighty bow known as the Gandiva, a quiver which would never be empty, and a matchless chariot with a standard bearing the figure of a monkey. The Gandiva was a bow of rare powers. For years it was worshipped by gods, Danavas and Gandharvas. It was exceptionally powerful. No weapons could cut it, and it could vanquish a hostile army in the twinkling of an eye. Agni said to Krishna, who happened to be there, "Sir, I beg of you to help me in this exploit of the burning of Khandavavana." He also bestowed on Krishna a discus called Sudarshana. The discus would kill the person against whom it was directed and return to the wielder. Agni also presented to Krishna a mace called Kaumodaki. Krishna and Arjuna approached Khandavavana with Agni. Agni assumed the form of fire and pounced on Khandavavana. He began to reduce the forest to ashes. He was as effulgent as the sun himself. Takshaka begged Indra to save Khandavavana, and responding, Indra gathered clouds in the sky and caused rains. But Arjuna created a veritable roof of arrows over the Vana, and not a drop could reach it. Agni reduced the Vana to ashes. Only Ashwasena, the son of Takshaka, Maya, the architect of the Rakshasas, and 4 Sarangas were spared. Indra saved Ashwasena. Arjuna rescued Maya, and Agni himself spared the antelopes. After the conflagration, Agni regained his former luster. He thanked Krishna and Arjuna and departed in order to accept oblations. As a token of his gratitude to Arjuna, who had rescued him from the flames of Agni, Maya presented him with a conch known as the Devadatta. He constructed a splendid palace for the Pandavas. The gem-studded palace which Maya built was a grand one. It shone with the glow of gold and the luster of 9 kinds of precious stones. Its walls were studded with gems, and festoons of diamonds decorated it. The finest collections and paintings doubled its loveliness. In the garden shone a pond with gold lotuses and glittering fish. The palace which Maya built surpassed the palaces of the greatest gods in radiance and beauty. Yudhishthira entered the palace at an auspicious hour amidst grand celebrations. Once Narada visited Yudhishthira. All the brothers welcomed him reverently and bowed to him, adorning a seat which Yudhishthira offered. Sage Narada preached Rajadharma, the code of conduct for kings. Yudhishthira, the ruler's first duty is to strengthen his reign. To this end, he should undertake 8 types of works: agriculture, trade, animal husbandry, laying roads, construction of bridges, construction of forts, mining, and gain possession of secret treasures. There should be abundant wealth, grains, and water in every village and city. The laborers should be paid their monthly salary regularly without delay, or else those who depend solely on this source become poor and will rebel. You should be impartial in your treatment of people. They should have access to you to unburden themselves as freely as to their own parents. A part of the revenue of the kingdom should be held in reserve for hard times. When contagious diseases or other afflictions harass the people, these funds should be utilized. These reserve funds stand in good stead when famine and drought stalk the land. You should yourself call for details of the revenue and the expenditure of the kingdom every day, every month, and every year and review them. You should inquire into shortcomings and lapses and take corrective measures. Agriculture should not rely solely on the rains. Tanks should be constructed. The principal activities and agencies of a kingdom are agriculture, trade, animal husbandry, and financial institutions. The seed grains and food grains of cultivators should be protected from insects and pests. Loans should be advanced to farmers on reasonable terms so as to ensure their well-being. You should maintain close relations with farmers that will foster in them affectionate pride in their country, and that in turn will help the kingdom progress. Village officials should always be engaged in ensuring the security of the village, the supervision of agriculture and trade, the chastisement of the wicked, and the protection of the good. Women should receive special protection. Nothing that insults and disgraces them should be permitted to happen. They should not be harassed in any manner. Where women are worshipped, there the gods are pleased. Remember this. Homes should be set up for the deaf, the blind, the lame, the physically handicapped, and the aged, deserted by their children or childless, and you should look after them as your own children. Fire extinguishing equipment should always be in readiness. You should have a team of physicians to deal with various diseases. You should have storehouse of medicines. Thieves and robbers who strike at villages and cities should be captured and punished. Judges should be beyond temptation and should judge justly. The minister, the commander-in-chief, the financial officer, the revenue officer, the officer in charge of prisons, the judge, the chief of espionage, the mayor, the architect, and the officer entrusted with the guarding of the borders. These are the pillars of the administration. A country can win the devotion of the people only if these function effectively. Then the land prospers and is safe from external attacks. Every part of the administration should be in experienced hands. You should not take decisions all by yourself. Invite your ministers and other leading advisors and take a decision only after consulting them. A ruler ought not to be lazy or a sluggard. He should not be lost in hunting, gambling, and other similar addictions. He should by temperament be inclined to chastise the wicked and protect the virtuous. He should not needlessly cause grief or provoke others. Excessive sleep, laziness, timidity, needless anger, harsh conduct, and procrastination, these every man should eschew. A ruler in particular should eschew these 6 vices. Yudhishthira listened to Narada's exposition of a king's code of conduct and said, "Great sage, your counsel has enlightened me. I shall obey your instruction," and bowed to him. Narada blessed the Pandavas and returned. Yudhishthira's reign was founded on righteousness. When it became necessary to impose a tax, he deliberated for a long time and took care to see that the people did not suffer. He punished the wicked and protected the righteous. Because of his righteousness, the land received timely rains, and village and city prospered alike. Cattle, wealth, cultivation, and trade and commerce flourished. There was neither famine nor drought. Diseases did not pester people. All the people were truthful and virtuous.